Hello and welcome to this week's episode of NLDR, the Narrative Lectionary Podcast for people on the go. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, joined this and every week by my friend and colleague Dr. Amy Robertson. This week, the Narrative Lectionary finds us in Isaiah 40. The exile is over and the prophet has a vision of comfort for the people. We talk about who exactly is comforting whom, why God can refer to the Persian king Cyrus as the Messiah, and how restoration after trauma requires the whole community. Also, there are robot voices. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Bobby.
Hey, Amy, how are you this week?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I think that sounds exactly the same every week.
I think it might. I think that's our most consistent feature.
Like even your tone, the tone of your voice, and like the little like haha that I do.
Yeah,
when I say
because it's so weird. I should stop doing.
No, it's good. I like it.
It's good. Great.
Yeah,
Okay,
if we
good.
were like, hello, Amy. Like
that might be fun. We could do a whole podcast of robot voices.
Today we're talking about Isaiah 40.
Okay, but we can't do it for Isaiah 40 because this is so beautiful.
Comfort, oh, comfort my people.
Okay, I can't wait to talk about this section of text. And I'm so eager to launch in, but I think before we launch in, we should talk a little bit about context and what our listeners might want to know about this text before we start reading.
So Isaiah 40 is the beginning of the second part of Isaiah, sometimes called Deutero-Isaiah or just Second Isaiah, where the first part of Isaiah, chapters 1 to 39, is set in the 8th century in the time of Ahaz and Hezekiah. This text seems to be speaking from the end of the exile. So we're in somewhere around 540, 538, somewhere in there. So where we are in the story of ancient Israel is the people have, Jerusalem has been conquered in 586, which we were talking about last time with Jeremiah. The people have been taken away into Babylon. They've been in exile now for close to 50 years. And then this prophet is now speaking to exiles who have been away from home, captured by the Babylonians, who have seen their home destroyed, and is now speaking a word of hopeful return about the end of the exile that's coming.
This is a hopeful text. Like Deutero-Isaiah is a pretty hopeful text about sort of reconciliation and comfort and all good things to come.
Yeah.
Is there anything historically that you would tie this to based on sort of where we roughly date this text?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that one could say about that, but I think the important piece is that this prophet can see either in the near term or maybe he's even writing afterwards, but he can see the end of the Babylonian exile coming. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that we find out in Isaiah chapter 45, verse 1, is that this prophet has recognized that Cyrus of Persia is on the rise. And so the Babylonians are either about to be defeated or have just been defeated, and Cyrus is coming, Persia is coming to restore the fortunes of Judah and to send the people home. Anything else you would say about that?
I mean, I think you've covered it pretty much, but that it's pretty remarkable in its own way that King Cyrus he's a foreign king. Yeah. But there's so much sort of hope placed in the thought that Persia will allow Judah to function pretty independently and sort of rise back to its glory days, even if it's not quite its own national entity.
And in 45:1, God goes so far, or Second Isaiah goes so far as having God call Cyrus my anointed, or my Mashiach, my Messiah.
My Messiah.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And so Cyrus is the savior of the Jews. The kings of Israel were called anointed ones, right?
Right.
But here we have this foreign king who is God's chosen one. Yeah, and the theology of this time period and the theology of Second Isaiah is that the God of Israel has raised Cyrus to power so that Cyrus can restore the Jews to their homeland and restore worship in the temple. Mm-hmm.
I think the only other contextual things I would want to offer, I mean, we started out by saying this is a very popular text both in the Christian community and the Jewish community. In the Christian community, it is read during Advent, yes?
The narrative lectionary, which we are following, does not always care what is read during Advent, but this text is always read during Advent, and the reason for that is because in the New Testament Gospels, the figure of John the Baptist is connected to this figure in verse 3, a voice cries out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. In the Gospels, that person crying out in the wilderness becomes John the Baptist, and prepare the way of the Lord is a reference to Jesus coming as the Messiah. And so this passage is crucial in the Gospels themselves for the understanding of the arrival of Jesus. What is the role of this text in the Jewish tradition?
So in the Jewish tradition, this text is part of Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of Comfort. There's sort of a period of time in the summer, right after a holiday called Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av it just means the 9th of Av. It's just the date. It's usually in August. And it marks the anniversary of the destruction of the temple, which was such a sort of turning point in the way that Israelites, ancestors of the Jews, sort of interacted with God. And then after that come these sort of texts of hope and reconciliation and comfort. And that's where we find Isaiah 40 in the Jewish lectionary.
So Isaiah 40 is the comfort that comes after the mourning,
after the destruction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, should we get into it?
Let's do it.
So I am reading from the NJPS and starting in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 1. Comfort, O comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and declare to her that her term of service is over, that her iniquity is expiated, for she has received at the hand of the Lord double for all her sins. Did you first encounter this text as lyrics in a song, or as something you heard, or as something you read? Do you remember?
I don't really remember. You know, I've certainly heard this as part of Handel's Messiah.
But you don't know if you knew the text first as text.
Yeah, I am more of a word guy than a musical guy, as you might have anticipated.
No, you play guitar. You're a song leader.
Well, I got 3 chords and a smile. What I lack in talent, I make up for in enthusiasm, is the way I say that. Yeah, but you are actually a musician, and your family is a very musical family. So I'm curious what your encounter with this text.
Well, certainly my encounter was first through Handel's Messiah. I want to give a big shout out here to all my Jews who know every word and every note of every voice part for every aria within Handel's Messiah. Love it.
Is there a lot of you? Or are you the only one in that category? Or is that like a...
I'm not the only one. There actually is a group of people from my synagogue who go each year to the local Messiah sing-along.
Oh, right on.
It's an incredible piece of music. Relatedly, this probably won't work if you read this first as text, but have you ever heard this first line as, "Come for tea, my people"?
Come for tea?
Come for tea. I'm inviting you for tea. Come for tea, my people.
Oh, no, no.
Okay, I was just checking. I mean, that would be comforting.
Yeah.
It would be comforting.
Are there people who think that's what that
there are people who think that's what that line is, because in the Messiah it's like using King James, right?
Comfort ye.
Comfort ye. You're not used to hearing that in English, so you hear comfort ye. You know it has to do with comfort.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, beautiful. Weird. Yeah. Okay.
Comfort tea, my people.
But moving away from our tea sandwiches here, I always heard this as comfort ye, again, because that's not a way that people usually speak. I heard it as reflexive. And when I actually looked at the text, I was surprised to see this is not reflexive. It does not say comfort yourself. It's an imperative, and it's a plural imperative.
Yeah.
Who is being commanded to comfort God's people?
Yeah. So when you say it's a plural imperative, like I know that you're from New York, but you have been living in the South for a long time, and I live in Arkansas, and so so if you're going to translate this into like Southern English, it would be like, "Hey y'all, comfort my people." Right? Y'all comfort my people.
Yeah.
And so, which is interesting that it's not, the people are not being called to sort of comfort themselves, but there is some other entity called to comfort them.
Right, and it's not God somehow comforting people, which I guess was my other reading when I just was young and heard the Messiah. But some group is being told to comfort the people.
Yeah, someone is summoning somebody else's to comfort the people. And it's not entirely clear in the text who that is. To me, the reasonable kind of setting is that what we have is kind of God seated in the divine council amongst the other divine beings, or the angels, or however you want to think about them. This has happened before in Isaiah, if you remember.
Like 6?
Yeah, when Isaiah, 8th century prophet has his call story in Isaiah 6. He's in the temple, and there is the seraphim, and then there's this call that says, whom shall we send and who will go for us? And Isaiah says, here I am, Lord, send me. And so this idea of God talking in a divine council about doing stuff prophetically has some history within this text. So that's the way I would tend to read it, is in the divine council, God is saying, or somebody in the divine council is saying, hey, all you divine beings, comfort my people. And so that's what I would read in the first instance. But I also think it's interesting to think about God commanding the reader to comfort the people. And then it creates this kind of interesting, like the people reading this text are both the ones being called to offer comfort and
the people being comforted.
The ones, yeah. So you don't have to think about yourself as either I am someone who comforts or I am someone who is to be comforted. But I can both be someone in need of comfort and also someone who can offer comfort.
Which, I mean, in my experience is so often how it actually works, right? It's rarely that you are in no distress at all and you have an opportunity to comfort someone else. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
But often there's shared distress.
Yeah.
And what we can do is try to offer comfort and safety for other people and hope they'll offer it back to us. Okay. I just need to like verbalize this and put it out there. We don't have to deeply explore this, but it was like nagging at me a bit. I have to tell you, when I first read this as a grown woman who knows something about the world, we've talked about sort of like the romantic relationship metaphors and like tipping into, if humans were doing these things, it would sound an awful lot like domestic abuse or an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And this like speak tenderly to Jerusalem and say like, I've punished you enough now, makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I know that is not what this text is saying. I know this is not humans. This is not about human relationship, but I think I want to name it because if you're talking about this text in front of a group of people and you don't know the experience of those people, to just think about how that might resonate, like that idea that, okay, now that I've finished beating the heck out of you, I've decided you've had enough and I'm going to be super gentle and loving.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And, you know, this second part of this little just section that you read, so speak tenderly and cry to her that she has served her term, that her penalty is paid, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. Like, there's so much going on right there. And part of it is what you're saying. The other thing that's here is this text is kind of accepting the idea that the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile is a punishment for the sinfulness of the people or the sinfulness of the kings, or however you want to parse that out. So one point is they have done their time, right? And so that is clear and clean now. There has been a sense for a number of texts now that the people kind of have been deserving of punishment. And now this text is saying the people no longer deserve punishment. Like, that is over and done with, and there's something new that can now happen. And then this last line, she has received double for all her sins. There's a lot of things one can say about that, I think, none of which probably solve the issue. But I'm just curious, when you think about that, the doubleness of the punishment, how do you parse that out?
I guess I read it as some kind of really affirmative statement that we're really sure it's done.
Yeah.
We're sure. If you imagine Israel as this people who has sort of taken on this theology that we deserve what we're getting.
Yeah.
To really convince them that, like, you don't deserve anymore.
I definitely affirm that reading, and I think that is a good reading. I think there's probably a way of reading it when you think back. If you think about the connection to Lamentations and daughter Zion in that text, basically what she says is, I might have deserved to be punished, but I did not deserve this.
That's right.
And one can read this almost as a little bit of an admission that she was right about that, where God says, yeah, I overdid it. And I mean, I don't know what you do with that theologically exactly.
Yeah.
But some way we have to deal with that sense of the doubleness.
Verse 3, a voice rings out, clear in the desert a road for the Lord, level in the wilderness a highway for our God. Let every valley be raised, every hill and mount made low. Let the rugged ground become level and the ridges become a plain. The presence of the Lord shall appear, and all flesh as one shall behold, for the Lord himself has spoken. So you know I'm like a little bit of a weird maniac about the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the
Yeah.
wilderness, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
a little weird. Second half of the book of Exodus, and the Israelites are wandering through the desert, and God says that all the Israelites are staying in their little tents, and God says, "Build me a tent, and I will dwell among you while you're sort of on your journey."
Yeah.
And so, sort of just as the exiles need to come back to Jerusalem, this depicts God coming back. Like it depicts creating a way for God to come back. And we sort of
Yeah.
imagine God's actually going on a journey, sort of physical journey in a sort of embodied way, just like there was a tent in the wilderness for that sort of parallel shared experience action between the Israelites and God.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, so the fact that this highway is for God that's really interesting. And I mean it's clearly there in the text, but I'm not sure I had really processed it that way. But yeah,
How do you
creating.
process it? How do you read this?
Yeah, I mean I think the way that you're reading it is good. Like my own kind of reading it is sort of that the people have been in exile in Babylon, and God has been also presumably in Babylon, and so now they're returning to Jerusalem, and so
Mm-hmm.
in this dangerous, windy, hilly, deserty journey is just gonna like we're just gonna build a super highway where you can just like straight shot there.
Mm-hmm.
And so a yes for God, but in my own mind, I think I've kind of moved that to be like it's going to be easy for the people to return, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is also true.
Which I think is there, absolutely. So yeah. Earlier in Isaiah, in chapter 35, which I think is also Deutero Isaiah, there's this description of the desert being transformed so that the exiles can travel easily back through it. So instead of having to, they would usually travel a particular route that sort of like followed where the water is and sort
Yeah,
of make a safer journey. But if you picture what it would actually be like to have to travel through a desert, I mean, heck no, you're not coming out of exile. Who wants to do
yeah,
that? So yeah, I think it definitely ties to the human experience of that as well.
yeah. One of the things that's interesting to me about this is it's only in verse 5 after the way has been made in the wilderness and the valleys lifted up and the mountains lowered that then
Mm-hmm.
the glory of the Lord shall be revealed and all the people
Mm,
shall see together. So it seems like this kind of flattening and leveling and evening is necessary or I don't know if it's necessary, but like it is the thing that happens before the glory of the Lord can be seen by all the people. And that language of all flesh, I think refers not just to Israel, but like to all flesh, right? Like all the creatures, all the nations. And so in this interesting kind of way, like this restoration of the way for the people to get back is reveals to the world God's glory. And so there's an interesting connection there about when the people of God thrive, when the people of God find their way, that
mm-hmm.
has effect not just for them, but also it
Mm-hmm.
reveals God's glory to everyone else.
So I'm going to read my translation of the next part. I think there are a couple of different ways that this could be fairly translated, but I'm picking up in verse 6. A voice rings out, "Proclaim." Another asks, "What shall I proclaim?" All flesh is grass, all its goodness like flowers of the field. Grass withers, flowers fade, when the breath of the Lord blows on them. Indeed, man is but grass. Grass withers, flowers fade, but the word of our God is always fulfilled. My question about this is, where do the quotation marks go?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the right question. And so in the NJPS, there are quotation marks.
Yes, there are.
In the NRSV, there are quotation marks just on cry out or proclaim and what shall I cry, what shall I proclaim, but not on the rest. But what you're
Hmm.
pointing to is it's not clear who the speaker is and where the speakers end, right?
Yeah, okay. So, you want me to do voices? The first voice says, "Proclaim."
Oh my god.
What shall I proclaim? All flesh is grass, all its goodness like flowers of the field. Grass withers, flowers fade, when the breath of the Lord blows on them. Indeed, man is but grass. Grass withers, flowers fade, but the word of our God is always fulfilled.
That was so helpful. It's like an ejection of a prophet and then a divine response almost.
Mm-hmm.
If you read it that way, what's the message there that's comforting? Right, this is supposed to be a comforting message, I think.
I think right, exactly. I mean, I think this is supposed to be a comforting message. I think if the response to that voice to proclaim is sort of like, what's the point? This is all temporary. Like, what's the point? Or I don't have the power to do this or something like this, or some other like negative self-talk going on in there. To have the sort of leading voice come back and respond by saying like, look, that's true, but the word of our God is always fulfilled. So like, it's true that is fleeting, but you can rely on the word of God.
Yeah.
I think that's comforting.
That. Yeah.
That's not how my quotations are written though.
So in the NJPS, the second voice just says, "What shall I proclaim?"
Right.
And then the first
voice says the whole rest of it.
Yeah.
If we read this as the thing that is supposed to be proclaimed, the whole thing that's supposed to be proclaimed starts out by saying all humans are like, grass and flowers in the field that are going to fade, right? Like this is the first part of the message that's supposed to be proclaimed.
Yeah.
I think that's weird. That is, if you're trying to get people to come back and trust you, I wouldn't lead by saying like, you're super fragile. It's not comforting if you start out by tearing someone down.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Verse 9, ascend a lofty mountain, O herald of joy to Zion. Raise your voice with power, O herald of joy to Jerusalem. Raise it, have no fear, announce to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, the Lord God comes in might, and his arm wins triumph for him. See, his reward is with him, his recompense before him. Like a shepherd, he pastures his flock. He gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them in his bosom. Gently he drives the mother sheep. I love how the imagery here has God coming in might and has all these sort of powerful, images of power or a particular type of power. I can't think of quite the right word. But then also as a shepherd.
Yeah.
Who's sort of caring for his flock and holding his lambs against his bosom.
Yeah, I really love that too. So verse 10 has like the mighty God who has God's arm is outstretched and carries recompense. Like that's a daunting image of power. Mm-hmm. Verse 11, is this shepherd. He's holding a little lamb, like, hi, lammy, and carrying them like next to his chest and gently leading them along, like that. So that power image and then that nurturing image.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's like a Calvin Klein commercial.
What? Can you?
Of some like
can you help me with that?
Muscly father figure in his underpants making pancakes for his child. That'd be a good commercial.
Yeah. Okay. And it's exactly that. Like it's not trying to replace the one image with the other. It's trying to say these two ideas go together. This powerful God who can defend you and this nurturing God who can carry you around and lead you gently. Like those are all the same. And like there's good news. Like you want your shepherd to be able to comfort you and lead you where you need to go. And also, if a bear shows up, you want that, you want that.
You want your shepherd to fight the bear.
Yeah, like pull on his jeans over his Calvin Klein underwear and like kick some bear booty. And other thing that's interesting to me here. So in the NJPS, the herald was giving good tidings to Zion and good tidings to Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. In the NRSV, it's get you up to a high mountain, O Zion, herald of good tidings. So in that, it's Zion and Jerusalem are the heralds.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I was kind of looking at the Hebrew and trying to figure out, like, I think your translation is probably the better one here. So so the herald is either the prophet or the divine being who is supposed to call good news to Zion and Jerusalem. But it's interesting. Like, I think the Hebrew could probably be read either way. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting if Zion and Jerusalem are the heralds of good tidings. Mm-hmm. That changes a lot of things. So then I think what you have is Zion and Jerusalem, who are maybe the key exiles anyway. So it's a reestablishment. So God is reestablishing the central city. And from there, it's proclaimed to everyone else.
I would like to notice the absence of something.
Okay, I can guess what it is, but go ahead.
You can?
I mean, maybe not.
There are a lot of things that are absent.
Yeah.
There's no hamburger. There's no vehicles. There's no Davidic king.
I was right! I knew it!
That was such an excited
I
voice.
know.
There's
Yes.
no Davidic king. And you know, whenever the Davidic king comes up in these other texts, even though it's all over the place, every time I'm like, why are you still talking about that king?
Yeah.
Can't we talk about something else? There's no king.
Yeah, there's not. Is that true of Is that
I
true of
think
second
that is
Isaiah generally?
common. That is generally the trend of Deutero-Isaiah. There's not so much interest in
Yeah.
a Davidic king. Because
Yeah.
Deutero-Isaiah thinks that really what's going to be the best situation is maybe to like have Persia come in control. They'll give Judah the autonomy that they need, and maybe they can just sort of go back to that more direct connection between Israel and God and not have a king mucking things up.
I feel like you're
I
down
mean,
on the Davidic monarchy.
I'm not down on the Davidic monarchy. Okay, so here's the reason that I mentioned the Davidic king, other than just it's interesting, leads me into sort of the concluding question that we usually end with,
Yeah.
which is, and what do we do with this now
Yeah.
in our lives? And so one of the questions that I had at the beginning that I didn't mention is when you think about this text sort of now in the context of your religious community, does it matter, or how does it matter, that it seems that this is a different author than Isaiah ben Amos?
Yeah. What are you thinking about?
I am thinking about how one might encounter a text differently if they thought it was all by one person, and maybe have a
Oh, I see.
tendency to gloss over differences or harmonize things, or maybe not notice that this whole section of the book doesn't really mention the Davidic king, but that other section mentioned the Davidic
Oh,
king,
I
and maybe
see.
not notice when you're bringing in ideas from one section into another.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to say that we as readers can't bring in things from one section to another. Of course we can. Like that's part of modern interpretation. But I think it makes me more attentive to sort of the particularities of different theologies and of
Yeah.
different audiences, and like what do the people that this text is directed to need to hear, and how
Yeah.
is it different from what these other people needed to hear?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the commitments that you and I both have is that the Hebrew Bible speaks with a diversity of voices. And so that when you try to make them all speak the same, say the same thing, you lose the richness of the text.
That was very well said.
So don't erase the distinctiveness of Second Isaiah in an attempt to fit it in with other things.
What else would you like to say about this?
We're reading this, as we talked about earlier, as Christians. My community is reading this in the time of Advent as an anticipation of the arrival of John the Baptist, who is in turn anticipating the arrival of Jesus. So we read, in the wilderness. Actually, in the New Testament, it's interesting. They punctuate verse 3 differently. So here in Isaiah, a voice cries out, comma, quote, in the wilderness prepare the way of the Lord. In the New Testament, it's read as a voice cries out in the wilderness, comma, quote, prepare the way of the Lord. And so John the Baptist, the wilderness dweller who's out eating locusts and honey and has, like wearing wilderness clothes or whatever. And Lord there is a reference in the New Testament text to Jesus. So whereas Isaiah is thinking about announce the arrival of, Adonai, the God of Israel, back into Jerusalem, the New Testament is doing something about Jesus there. But my thought for my community is like along the lines of what we were just saying. Like let's let second Isaiah do what he's doing, which is not announcing Jesus. Let's just let second Isaiah announce that there is comfort that is being brought because of the action of the God of Israel who is restoring the community, and that in itself is bringing comfort not only to Israel and to Judah, but to the world. And I mean, that is a profound statement. And the fact that, as we were talking about in that first paragraph, somebody is being called to share that comfort, and somebody is being comforted. And maybe those are the same people. I really liked that idea that we were developing, that we who have been through some stuff, it now is a time for us to be comforted about the future. And also, we who have been through some stuff have some comfort that we can offer to each other about the future. And so let's speak good tidings of what is yet possible for us. I'm not sure that really touched the ground any place, but
No, I mean, I think Deutero-Isaiah is a little bit off the ground, which is which is part of why we love Deutero-Isaiah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the thought that first came to me after I read, as I was sort of preparing for our conversation, is going back to this idea of like the journey back.
Yeah.
Right? And sort of enticing people to make the journey back. And it's a difficult journey back, and sort of thinking about the ways that we have to do that in our own lives after a traumatic experience, right? So if you have some traumatic experience and leave your faith community or step away from your relationship with God, or you become addicted into different, to drugs or alcohol or different things. You're trying to escape a traumatic experience. You leave a traumatic relationship, whatever it is, and then you build a life sort of over there, right? While you're sort of in your trauma, when you feel that it's time to come back to faith in God, or to come back to sobriety, or come back to relationship with someone, it's not as easy as just like flipping a switch and being like, okay, punishment's over.
Yeah.
Everything's like it was. Everything's not like it was.
Yeah.
And you have to create some sort of space for that and think of like, how can I, raise the valleys and lower the mountains, and like, what are the things I can do to sort of start to make that journey? But I see a lot of comfort and a lot of sort of come in this text.
Yeah.
But also some recognition that it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be a journey. It's going to be baby steps. Get back to where you were. You can't just turn it off.
I really love that, Amy. And, and thinking back, like connecting those two ideas, so there's work to be done in order to get back to where you were. And in this text, the call is going out to a plural y'all to do the work. So it's not simply that the person who has experienced the trauma or the whatever it is has to figure out a way back, but that there is a community of people who have been tasked and commanded with helping to smooth the terrain that allows the return, like allows the restoration.
Yeah, that's really, really nice. I like that a lot. Bobby, do you know what we're talking about next week?
Next week, we're reading parts of Ezra 1 and 3.
All right. I have to say off the top, I don't know what that is, but I look forward to seeing.
Well, we'll be talking about the return from exile and the rebuilding of the temple.
Well, I hope you'll come for tea, my people.
Yes. All right. And if you don't do that, I hope you'll come back next week when we're talking about Ezra.
Yes, that sounds great. Y'all have a great week.
This has been another episode of NLDR, the Narrative Lectionary Podcast for people on the go. Join us again next week when we read Ezra 1 and 3 about the people's return to Judah, the restoration of sacrifice, and the rebuilding of the temple. We'll see you then.